Hello everyone, and welcome. In today's video, we're exploring the latest thought-provoking article by Dr. Turki Faisal Al-Rasheed, published in Arab News. Today's article is titled, "The Political Economy of War: Incentives, Costs, and Choices for Saudi Arabia and the GCC." Before we begin, let me introduce the author. Dr. Turki Faisal Al-Rasheed is a Saudi businessman, academic, author, and internationally recognized thought leader. He serves as an adjunct professor at the University of Arizona and as an advisor to the Faculty of Agricultural and Food Sciences at the American University of Beirut. As the founder of Golden Grass, Inc., Dr. Al-Rasheed combines academic excellence with practical leadership, offering insightful perspectives on agriculture, sustainability, economic development, and public policy. He is also the author of the recently published book, Saudi Arabia: Transformation, Uncertainty, and Sustainability, which examines the kingdom's evolving economic and social landscape, highlighting the opportunities, challenges, and strategies shaping its long-term sustainable future. Now,
welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're absolutely flipping the script on how we typically think about global conflict. When we talk about war, we usually default to things like military strategy, deep-seated ideologies, or complex security dilemmas. But what if we looked at it through a completely different lens? Today, we are unpacking a fascinating analysis by Dr. Turki Faisal Al-Rasheed, and we're diving into the political economy of war. Specifically, we'll be examining the underlying incentives, the hidden costs, and the real choices facing Saudi Arabia and the wider Gulf Cooperation Council.
We do. It's an analysis titled The Political Economy of War: Incentives, Costs, and Choices for Saudi Arabia and the GCC.
Such a good piece.
Yeah, it really is. It was written by Dr. Turki Faisal Al-Rasheed, who is a visiting professor at the University of Arizona and an advisor at the American University of Beirut. And this was published in Arab News on August 17th, 2026.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because Dr. Al-Rasheed's core thesis really flips the standard geopolitical script on its head.
It totally does.
He argues that war is fundamentally a system of economic and political incentives. Like it dictates who benefits, who pays the price, and why certain conflicts seem to drag on for decades without any clear resolution.
Yeah, and to understand the unique challenges facing the Middle East right now, we have to first understand the global business model of modern warfare.
Right.
Dr. Al-Rasheed points out that to see the system in its most mature form, we actually need to look at the American experience.
Yeah, the American model.
Exactly. He uses this framework called the political economy of war. And I should say, this isn't just an abstract theory. It's the mechanical reality of how defense budgets are allocated and, consumed.
So where does the money actually go?
Well, in the American model, you have this highly durable, self-sustaining structure.
To make sense of this massive topic, here is our roadmap for today. We'll kick things off with the business of war, then move to the toll on the Gulf and explore the cost of instability. After that, we'll look at localizing defense capabilities before wrapping the whole thing up with a new strategic playbook.
Massive defense budgets do not remain insulated within the military apparatus itself.
They don't just stay with the generals.
No, not at all. They flow outward, they go to private contractors, major industrial manufacturers, and an increasingly expansive tech sector.
So we aren't just talking about building tanks here.
Oh, no.
We are talking about the entire ecosystem, right? Yeah. The R&D, the logistics, the software development, those massive long-term sustainment contracts. The text notes that over successive years, a huge portion of discretionary spending goes straight to outside firms.
What's fascinating here is how those financial flows lock in a very specific set of incentives. Defense contractors have to maintain open production lines just to remain viable.
They need to keep building things to stay in business.
Right. And to do that, they cultivate intense political relationships. They provide highly specialized local employment across various legislative districts.
So it's tied to local jobs.
Exactly. When you combine corporate revenue models with localized political interests, you create what Dr. Al-Rasheed calls a structural preference for a high baseline of defense spending.
A structural preference, meaning the system just naturally wants to spend money.
Yes. It generates the systemic openness to military intervention, and not necessarily because the strategic threat is existential, but because the machinery requires utilization just to justify its budget.
Wow. I want to look at the asymmetry in that equation, though, because the benefits of that system, like the sustained financial returns for contractors, the political capital for legislators bringing jobs to their districts, those benefits are tightly concentrated among a very narrow circle.
Very narrow.
But the costs, I mean, the massive national debt, the strategic blowback, the sheer amount of public treasure spent, those are broadly absorbed by the general taxpayer.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like a massive corporate project that is wildly over budget and failing. But because the outside consultants are making a fortune, no one in the boardroom wants to pull the plug.
That corporate analogy is spot on. It highlights the specific mechanism at play here. Because the costs are diffused across millions of taxpayers, the individual pain is diluted.
Right. I barely feel it on my tax bill.
Exactly. But the profits are hyper-concentrated, which means the lobbying power to keep the project alive is incredibly potent.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, and this economic structure actively explains why open-ended engagements, especially those with limited vital interests but expansive objectives, are nearly impossible to terminate. The financial incentive to stop simply doesn't exist within the supply base.
Which introduces a pretty fascinating psychological component that the text brings up, something Dr. Al-Rasheed calls the asymmetry of resolve.
This is a crucial concept. When a distant power engages in an asymmetric conflict, what is essentially a war of choice for them, their determination is inherently limited.
Because their actual homeland isn't under threat.
Right. The survival of their nation isn't on the line. Conversely, the adversaries they're fighting are often battling for their literal survival or their core autonomy, so their resolve is absolute.
So you have one side fighting for its life and the other side fighting while, still tethered to a peacetime domestic economy and regular election cycles.
Yeah. And the mechanical result of that asymmetry is endless attrition.
Just grinding it out.
Exactly. The distant power relies on high-tech, wildly expensive precision munitions to minimize its own casualties, so it rapidly depletes its stockpiles without ever achieving a decisive resolution. The conflict just grinds on.
Economy of war. Well, as you can see, it examines how budgets, contracts, and lobbying actually influence conflict. Think of it kind of like a giant self-sustaining corporate ecosystem. In the modern American experience, which the source material points out is really the most consequential modern case study we have, a highly durable structure has emerged. Huge defense budgets flow heavily into the pockets of private contractors. Year after year, major manufacturers and an expanding tech sector maintain their production lines, they build political relationships, and they provide local employment. All of this creates a deeply embedded structural preference for high baseline spending and, frankly, a constant openness to intervention.
What we have here is a stark asymmetry. On one side of the scale, you have a very narrow circle of beneficiaries. We're talking defense contractors, the tech sector, and specific political interests who capture sustained financial returns. But on the other side, you have the broad public burden. It's the wider public that actually absorbs the mounting debt, the massive opportunity costs, and the strategic setbacks. This dynamic really helps explain why open-ended engagements are incredibly difficult to terminate, even when there are limited vital interests at stake. The costs of prolonged attrition get widely distributed, while the financial benefits remain highly concentrated.
This raises a really important question, though. If the system is designed to benefit the supplier, the distant powers designing and selling the hardware, what happens to the countries that actually have to live in these war zones and buy these weapons?
That's the billion-dollar question.
Because the global defense industry is incentivized to continually produce and sell.
Mm-hmm.
They have to export this system.
They absolutely do. And this brings us to the core of the analysis, which is how the Gulf states, particularly Saudi Arabia and the GCC, essentially catch the costs of this global political economy.
They just absorb the shockwaves.
Yeah. Dr. Al-Rasheed meticulously details 3 distinct channels of transmission where the Gulf imports this burden. The first channel is direct arms procurement.
Okay, let's look at the sheer scale of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Gulf states are premier destinations for the most advanced weapons systems on the planet.
Unquestionably.
We are talking about multi-billion-dollar packages for integrated air and missile defense, precision-guided munitions, and then the decades-long sustainment and maintenance contracts that follow. Saudi Arabia's military expenditure consistently ranks among the highest globally.
And here is the profound irony of that expenditure, the actual mechanism of wealth transfer. By purchasing all of these advanced systems off the shelf from foreign suppliers, Gulf fiscal planning is effectively subsidizing foreign production.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the external demand from the GCC is what keeps those foreign production lines open.
So their money is supporting high-paying engineering and manufacturing jobs abroad in the supplier states.
Exactly. While simultaneously requiring
An extraction of wealth disguised as a security guarantee.
That's a great way to summarize it.
And that is only the first channel. The second transmission channel deals with regional security externalities, which is, the immediate visceral economic shock of geographical proximity to conflict.
Right. Just consider the mechanics of modern asymmetric warfare. It doesn't take a massive invading army to disrupt an economy anymore.
Not at all.
A handful of cheap drones or ballistic missiles targeting a single maritime choke point can severely disrupt global energy routes. But look at what happens internally to the regional economy.
Well, the text points out the chilling effect. It's not just the physical damage of a strike, it's the perception of risk.
Exactly the point. That perception acts as a risk premium. When investors see projectiles in the airspace, foreign direct investment hesitates.
Aviation routing gets super complicated.
Right. Tourism initiatives stall. Even for the highly diversified economies in the region that have built up substantial fiscal buffers, they still suffer output losses. And they incur massive infrastructure repair costs.
And the timing of those shocks is just brutal. These GCC states are in the middle of historic, multi-trillion-dollar national transformation projects. I mean, they are building entirely new industries from scratch.
Yeah, Vision 2030 and similar initiatives.
Exactly. So elevated geopolitical risk in the region raises their borrowing costs on the international bond market right when they need capital and investor confidence the absolute most.
Which leads directly into the third channel of transmission, the opportunity costs.
The tragic trade-off.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the chronic instability tax that the region pays every single day, even when the missiles aren't actually flying.
Because every single dollar allocated to emergency readiness, like every billion spent on interceptor missiles just to keep the airspace safe, is a dollar that cannot be deployed toward domestic growth.
It is a zero-sum game for resources. The capital consumed by emergency defense procurement is capital stolen from investments in human capital, from expanding the non-oil private sector.
From advancing AI infrastructure or building out the green energy grid.
Exactly. The longer these external conflicts remain open-ended and unresolved, the more resources are diverted away from the Gulf's long-term developmental timelines. The burden of this chronic instability is ultimately borne by ordinary people whose economic futures are delayed.
Okay, but wait, let me push back on this, though.
Sure.
If buying all these weapons is so expensive, and it subsidizes foreign jobs, and it actively stalls their own domestic transformation, why don't they just step away from the checkout counter?
It's a fair question.
Like, if they know the model is extractive, why not just radically decouple? Stop buying the hardware. Are they just trapped in a bad subscription model?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to acknowledge the hard geopolitical reality. Radical decoupling isn't really an option because the threats are not theoretical.
Right. The neighborhood is tough.
It is. The Gulf states reside in a highly volatile, heavily armed region where ballistic missiles and proxy militias are active daily realities. They can't simply step away from the checkout counter because they have genuine, immediate capability requirements.
They actually need the defense.
They absolutely require a security umbrella to protect their populations and to protect these massive economic transformations we just talked about. The security dilemmas are not imagined. They are existential.
So they are caught in this bind. They need the advanced hardware to survive today, but they can no longer afford to let the external political economy drain their wealth and delay their future. Like, they can't quit the system, but the current system is totally unsustainable.
That is the exact friction point driving the current shift. They realize they cannot afford to be passive objects in this global system anymore. Since they desperately need security but refuse to sacrifice their national transformations, they are fundamentally rewriting the rules of engagement.
Which brings us to the really exciting part.
Right. Saudi Arabia, in particular, is executing a deliberate, highly calculated adaptation strategy.
And the linchpin of that strategy is the localization of defense spending. The text highlights a very specific, very aggressive target. Saudi Arabia is mandating that more than half, over 50% of its military spending be localized by the year 2030.
That's a massive shift.
Huge. And they aren't just politely asking foreign contractors to hire locally. They are enforcing this through the hard mechanics of procurement.
The mechanism here is what's critical. They are utilizing strict regulatory frameworks and industrial participation requirements. In the defense industry, these are often called offset programs.
How does that work in practice?
Well, if a foreign defense prime wants a multi-billion-dollar contract with Riyadh, they can no longer simply build the jets or the missile batteries in their home country and ship them over.
Right.
The new requirement forces that contractor to establish joint ventures right there on Saudi soil.
So they are actively forcing technology transfer.
Precisely. They are demanding that the intellectual property, the manufacturing processes, and the maintenance supply chains are localized. They are actively converting their massive procurement bills into domestic industrial capacity.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, they are building a local defense sector that forces technological learning and creates high-skilled jobs for their own citizens. I actually want to read the exact quote from Dr. Al-Rasheed because it perfectly synthesizes this maneuver.
Go for it.
He writes, quote, "This is not merely an industrial policy, it is a strategic response to reduce vulnerability to external supply chains and the political economies that shape them."
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the scale of what they are attempting is just monumental. It's like, okay, imagine realizing you're spending your entire paycheck eating out at expensive restaurants every single night.
Okay, I like this.
And so you decide to just buy a farm, hire a master chef to teach you, and build your own culinary empire. You still get to eat, but now you actually own the supply chain.
That is a fantastic analogy because it captures the strategic intent perfectly. Building a domestic defense industrial base is immensely difficult.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, integrating advanced avionics or precision guidance systems requires a level of engineering maturity that usually takes decades to cultivate.
But they're doing it anyway.
They are looking at the math and realizing that the alternative remaining eternally dependent on the whims and political cycles of distant suppliers is a far greater risk.
Wow.
They are treating the costs of prolonged external conflicts not as inevitable destinies they must suffer, but as constraints they can actually engineer their way out of.
About the brutal reality of regional security externalities. Now, I know that sounds like a super academic term, but it really just means the devastating spillover costs of neighboring conflicts. We are looking at massive disruptions to critical energy routes, physical infrastructure damage from missiles and drones, and a severe chilling effect on aviation, tourism, and foreign investment. For economies that depend on a single maritime choke point, this means sharper contractions in export volumes. And even for the more diversified economies with solid fiscal buffers, these disruptions lead to output losses and elevated risk premiums. Those risk premiums drive up borrowing costs, they deter investment at the exact moment when economic transformation requires both capital and confidence.
All of this creates a massive national tug-of-war. Every single dollar and, frankly, every ounce of attention devoted to emergency readiness and conflict response competes directly with long-term priorities. We're talking about crucial investments in human capital, national infrastructure, and growing the non-oil private sector. These are the very foundations that underpin massive national transformation strategies like Saudi Vision 2030. The longer these external conflicts remain open-ended, the greater the diversion of resources away from those.
And the localization is really only the internal half of the equation, right? Because Dr. Al-Rasheed's analysis also details how they are fundamentally changing their external posture through what he calls strategic patience and diversified partnerships.
Yes, the unipolar era of relying on a single global superpower for blanket security is over.
Right.
And the GCC recognizes this. So they are actively spreading their diplomatic and economic bets across multiple global powers. They are engaging with alternative suppliers, building trade corridors that look east as well as west.
Refusing to be drawn into zero-sum great power competition.
Exactly.
They are essentially telling their traditional security partners, hey, we are no longer a captive audience with an open checkbook. We have options now.
And this brings us to another critical quote from the text that I think really defines this new era of Gulf diplomacy.
Oh, let's hear it.
Dr. Al-Rasheed states, quote, "Rather than remaining locked into the role of indefinite frontline customer or proxy within external conflict systems, regional capitals have raised the reciprocal stakes of partnership, expanded economic and diplomatic ties across multiple powers, and prioritized national development timelines."
They are drastically raising the reciprocal stakes. Like, if a foreign power wants the strategic benefit of a partnership with Saudi Arabia or the GCC, they have to contribute directly to the region's economic and developmental goals.
Yes. The relationship has to be symbiotic, not extractive.
It is a masterclass in reclaiming agency. And, while critics might view strategic patience as passivity or fence-sitting during major global crises, Dr. Al-Rasheed argues that across a longer historical arc, this non-aligned patience is actually a highly effective tool for survival.
Oh, absolutely. By not rushing into every regional conflagration engineered by outside powers, they preserve their capital, they build their leverage, and most importantly, they keep their national transformations on schedule.
Right. They are measuring success not by tactical military victories, but by the relentless reduction of economic and human costs at home.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you as you listen to this today? Why does the nuance of Gulf defense procurement matter to someone who doesn't live in the Middle East or work in the defense sector?
It's a great question.
Because understanding the political economy of war is really about recognizing the invisible incentives that run our world. Whether you are analyzing shifts in global supply chains, evaluating corporate monopolies, or even just navigating the power dynamics within your own industry, you have to follow the incentives.
Always follow the incentives.
When you realize that a system is historically designed to extract value from you, like distributing the heavy costs onto your shoulders while concentrating the profits somewhere else, you have a choice. You can remain a captive customer, or you can take the difficult, expensive, but ultimately necessary steps to build your own capacity.
And that realization leads to a profound global implication. We are entering a multipolar environment where no single power has the capacity, or really the domestic political will, to unconditionally underwrite the security of others anymore.
The world has changed.
It has. The historical model relied heavily on distant powers fighting endless wars of choice to feed their massive, localized defense economies. But this raises a vital question to leave you with today. What happens to that trillion-dollar global defense industry when its biggest, most reliable, most lucrative customers like Saudi Arabia successfully start building their own equipment?
Wow.
As the traditional buyers declare their independence, localize their spending, and master the technology, the entire global architecture of war and influence might be forced to fundamentally and permanently restructure itself.
The era of the endless blank check is closing. That giant cinematic map in the war room is getting completely redrawn. But this time, the borders and the rules are being drawn by the people who actually live there. We want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It has been a real pleasure. Keep questioning the incentives.
As we come to the end of today's discussion, we're reminded that the fight against environmental challenges is not just about technology, it's about vision, determination, and long-term commitment. Through this article, Dr. Turki Faisal Al-Rasheed highlights how Saudi Arabia's bold strategies, innovative solutions, and sustainable development efforts are transforming one of the world's greatest natural challenges into a remarkable success story. If you'd like to read the complete article, you'll find the link in the description below, or you can visit arabnews.com for the full publication. To learn more about Dr. Turki Faisal Al-Rasheed, his research, publications, and latest insights, visit www.tfrasheed.org. If you found this video informative, please support our channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Your support helps us continue bringing you thoughtful discussions on global affairs, sustainability, innovation, and the future of Saudi Arabia. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay inspired, stay curious. We'll see you in the next video.